All right, hello everyone. Good night. Well, not good night, but welcome. Episode 11 here of Talkin Shop with Outlier Firefighters. I am Alex Tanner. I am here with Chief Henry Gruba, and you guys are in for a real treat tonight. Tons of wisdom, tons of knowledge over here, and I'm excited to be part of this. So, Chief, I'm going to send it your way here. If you want to just give us a little introduction of where you've come from, where you've worked, and what your first exposure to the fire service was, and how you got to where you are today. Oh, Chief.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you here tonight. In spite of everything that's been going on behind the scenes, we had some technical stuff happening. So looks like the desktop. I'll change that in a little bit. But I've been in the fire service. It'll be going on almost 40 years this fall. I started in 1984. I was a paid-on-call firefighter paramedic in Calumet City, Illinois. It was the family business. My father was a fireman, so I followed in his footsteps. I never got a chance to ride with him, but I did visit with him a lot. He was already retired 2 years when I got on paid-on-call. I was in Calumet City for all the way to 1991, and then Waukegan decided to hire me, which was great. I was there for 22 years. I retired as a lieutenant paramedic, and then along the way, I became an instructor for the Illinois Fire Service Institute, which I still am today. Was an adjunct instructor at McHenry County College in their fire science program. When I retired from Waukegan, I went off to MCC, and I was department chair for 2 years. I started to get more active with online classes with the Institute, so I was able to do that. And also, I was lucky enough to be assistant chief of Beach Park Fire Department for about 14 months. And then I became fire chief in Richmond, and I was there for 3 years. So I know in the pre-show, in the green room, we talked a little bit about stuff, and it was, how do you enjoy retirement? And I was telling people I was semi-retired. What the fudge?
Oh, you're still with me.
Okay. It says I lost a network connection, so maybe it's the camera.
I don't know. I can still see you and hear you.
And okay, I can't see you. I just got to spin anything. Let's keep talking until I can't hear you anymore. Retirement was a little tough for me to transition to retirement because I was used to working 5 to 6 days a week for like 40 years, starting with my paper route in high school and then, doing fire stuff all the time and doing a lot of teaching and just doing things. So I was able to do that. And so I don't think I'm ready to retire yet. I think I still got, let's just say at least a couple more years in me, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we'll see where it goes. I've got a few irons in the fire. I've got a few things I'm working on. Then the system's back up. And we'll see what happens. Not ready to make any formal announcements yet, but don't be surprised. If you don't follow me on Facebook already, probably do so, and you'll see some announcements on that with what's going on probably within the next.
Oh, no, we lost him. We'll get him back. For sure. Mind the line between my face. He'll jump back in. I know he was explaining, so he's on satellite internet, which is somewhat inconsistent. Hey, there it is. He's back.
Happens. So it's just cool to sit down and talk to you, and just about life experiences and what's going on and what I've done throughout my career, what I think of stuff, and then what's the future of the fire service. So I'm looking for some really good conversation tonight. So thank you.
Yeah, we lost you for a couple seconds, I think, in the middle of that, but you were talking. Yeah, pay attention. Okay. You got some announcements coming up, and that there's going to be some big things
probably
happening.
30 to 60 days. Yeah, by Labor Day, stuff will be going on, or it won't be going on. So if you don't hear anything, I'm still around. Just things didn't work out the way I wanted it to.
Hey, fair enough. I'm going to throw here in the audience. We got just a couple hellos coming your way. So Vandenberg says, "Hey, Chief, John Slivka,
Yeah.
he's saying he had a pleasure of working with you for 2 years at Richmond. Wealth of knowledge and expertise. So
Yes.
you got some people in here. Hold on, Jonathan Di Nicola, also excited to
Oh,
hear
there
you
we
talk.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I would say all great people. Obviously worked with Jay outside of maybe a couple fires and stuff, but definitely, I don't want to say a grand old statesman of the fire service there because I don't want to date him. But yeah, he's a strong individual. John Slivka, enjoyed working with him. A strong like bull, able to do things and get stuff done. Jonathan D. Nicola, I'll go on a limb. Obviously, I love him a lot, love his family a lot. I was lucky enough to work with his dad. His dad was my lieutenant in Waukegan, and then his dad was battalion chief. So I worked with him with that, and also with a few projects along the way. But definitely good people, good strong individuals, and again, what we talked about in the green room there before we started. People knowing the job, all three of them. Doing the job, putting in the reps, making things happen. Um, Great individuals. So glad you're able to listen tonight. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
awesome.
Jonathan was also back in the day. Waukegan had we had a fire explorer post, and so Jonathan was one of the inaugural members of the post. And Jonathan's good people.
Awesome,
Yeah, I love him a lot.
awesome. Happy to have him in
Yeah.
here listening, and you got anybody in the
Yes.
chat too. You got questions? Throw them in there, right? Just because we got a script, well, more or less a script, doesn't mean that this is for you guys to throw in things too. So please, by all means, if you got stuff, I'll filter through it and we'll get it. We'll talk about it. But we'll kind of move into our next little thing here. So more introduction stuff, right? Of where you started. So. How did you learn about values and culture of firefighters? I know we're going to talk a little bit about it being a family business, and then who influenced you the most early on in
Yes.
your career?
I would have to say definitely it was my father. He was an engineer. It was a tested rank in Calumet City, so I learned a lot from him. He always had the fire trade magazines, fire engineering, firehouse laying around, various books. He never pushed me into the profession, but he was very happy when I got hired, and he was able to help me out a lot. And I learned how to do things from him. The mechanical stuff. The plumbing, the carpentry, and just working with your hands, and have an appreciation for that. And have an appreciation for the fire service. The fire family. Cal City was very big on picnics and Christmas time, holidays, parades. We were always doing something. And we'd meet at the firehouse before whatever happened. Then we'd meet afterwards. The city festival in town, the yearly thing, just doing things. So I learned a lot from him and people that were there. You sent me some of the questions in advance, so I had to think back, 40 plus years. But a lot of good people on Cal City that helped me a lot. Joe Skelton, he was a captain. Dennis Dabowski. Again, you don't know any of these people, but I remember them. My first ambulance call was with Jerry Rodagero. I remember my first ambulance call. It was a patient that had the runny boo-boos. He had the shits, if I can say that on a blog. And we took him to the hospital. And I was so new, I couldn't even call in on Mercy because we were using Mercy. And so he had to call in on Mercy, and then I just did the vital signs and stuff as we drove to the hospital. And along the way, I learned stuff from, guys in Waukegan, definitely, John D. Nicolda, Jonathan's dad, a lot of great individuals there, Jack Cruz, Tim Bradsky, Jim McGrain, just, again, a lot of names of people, that were doing the job before, not before I was born, but, still when I was in knee pants. And so I learned a lot from them, good old school firefighting. Again, firefighting was different back then, the early 90s, late 80s, getting into the 90s. So that was a big thing with that. But it was just great from that. And along the way, there's been great individuals that have helped me out. So you take a little bit from everybody you meet, even just people on the street, talking to people, who have no connection to the fire service. The military has always been a strong influence. What are their values? What do they believe in? So that's just very interesting because you should all this job you should always be reading something, attending what you're doing here. This is awesome for people to tune into this. Going to conferences. That's getting to be kind of blasé, especially after the COVID and all that. But people aren't doing it, but still going out networking. Again, lucky enough to get the FDIC again this year, and the pre-show stuff and the post-show stuff I think was more important. I think I learned more at 1 o'clock in the morning than I did at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so stuff like that. Just and also on the other side, I think I've learned a lot about what not to do from the people that were poor examples, and those people I will not name, but there were more than a few where I literally said to myself, don't do it that way because that's not the way to do it. Even though I'm just a kid, I know that's not the way to do it. Interacting with people. Lucky enough, I worked at a hardware store for 9 years. I worked at an Ace Hardware. And just talking to the customers, and again, getting that sense of, when minimum wage, when we were making $5 an hour, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. But just, responsibility for ordering the plumbing department, dealing with people. I was the assistant manager, and just learning life. And again, I don't want to put a blanket statement for everybody, but a lot of times you don't see that. People, they don't have a paper route anymore. So they don't know what it is if you don't go collecting, you don't get the money, so you're not making any money. They come out of high school, they do whatever they do, and now they want to come join the fire department. Great thing. Love it. We got to have fresh blood, got to have new people coming in, but they just, sometimes they don't get it. It's a job. I said, I've never worked a day in my life. Every day I'm, going to the firehouse is the best thing in the world. Coming in, seeing people, seeing brothers, again, that fellowship, the camaraderie, what's going on, what's happening, how's your family doing, how the dogs, everybody's off from school already, is everybody feeling well, that, there was the flu going around, and just knowing things like that is just awesome to be able to do that. And then when you come together on a call, and, I don't want to put a Jonathan on the spot, but I was lucky enough to work with him a couple of years, at the same firehouse. And I know we did good work. I know we saved lives, not only on rescue calls, but at fires, and, good, strong work. And we'd pull up to a fire, and the crew, we were at Station 3. So it was Engine 3, Rescue 3. There were 5 of us. And we would pull up, and you'd have a rockin' fire, and these guys would just be, hey, can we pull the 2.5? Can we pull the 2.5? Oh, okay, if you want to. And they'd pull the 2.5 and go to work. And it was a pleasure going to work with that. Just having people, again, who put the reps in, knew the job. They wanted to train. They were questioning things. We were watching videos. And it was just taking care of business. I didn't have to worry about them, and but then on the other hand, I made sure and I took care of them. I said, if you guys got a problem, come to me first. Let me know what you're doing. Even if hey, I want to go, I got to run a quick errand. Absolutely. Just let me know so that if somebody asks me, hey, do you know where your ambulance crew is? Yes, I do. And again, take care of each other. And sometimes you don't hear about that. How many times do people get pushed underneath the proverbial fire truck by their supervisor because I don't want to give them the courtesy of calling them the boss because it's pretty much they think it's an employee supervisor situation, but it's not. We're a team, we're a family, and let's do what we got to do. So that's probably more than what you wanted to hear.
No,
I apologize for that.
Oh,
you put the quarter in.
Don't you dare apologize.
You're going to get the full ride, buddy.
What I was going to say is there's this emphasis on the phrase "buddy to boss," and I fundamentally reject that thought process. Right? Yes, there is a difference from you being a blue shirt when you make a transition up into being a lieutenant or an officer position, but it doesn't mean that you can't still care about people in the context of what buddy would be.
Correct.
It doesn't mean that you can't hold them accountable for things, but you can't just flip a switch and all of a sudden now you're in charge of everyone and that's it. You're the boss. I reject that phrase and I hate when people use it. I got to also mention here, the reason I asked you had said, names that I wouldn't know, and you're right, I don't know, but I love asking the question because I believe that not everyone gets an opportunity to celebrate the people that influence them early. Maybe you just don't get to connect with them, and that's kind of honestly what we're doing. And I wanted to share. Brian Rao is in the chat here. He says, he went to Intro to the Fire Service through CLC, which also I did, and that basically inspired him to go work for Waukegan, where he's been for 21 years. Similar story for me. I took the same class through CLC. I was an 18-year-old kid out of high school, and now I'm in the job. I'm 13 years in between two departments, and like it was a thing that kicked it off. You were my first exposure. I grew up with my father and everything, but he like yours was very let Alex figure things out. Your class was the first time I really understood what my dad did, because we didn't really talk about those things when I was a kid. Yeah. So the early in your career, there's people like you were saying that they might even just come and go. It might be a touch and go and they're gone, but they're so influential and important, and we need to celebrate that as firefighters, and when you get a chance to thank those people. So as hokey as it is, I'm thanking you, and I appreciate what passion you gave in that class to an 18-year-old kid, right?
Yeah.
So
well, I'm glad you came to class, so you're welcome. And also, too, Brian Rao, strong individual, good man. Again, I love him a lot, too. Him and I, we've had some adventures together in Waukegan, being on the heavy rescue. We did some work. And then I'm sure he remembers that, the apartment fire in District 4. I'm sure he's chuckling to himself now. Again, I won't relate that story because I think the statute of limitations is still in effect. And then also, I'm sure he remembers training at the New Sun building, which I will not bring up either. But those were good times. Those were good times. And getting back to the buddy to boss thing, we're all human beings, and I think we forget that. And everybody has got something going on. Everybody has got baggage or luggage, or they've got a sack over their shoulder they're carrying. So as the supervisor or the boss, whatever you want to call it, the lieutenant, the first line supervisor, because you are a working supervisor, you need to understand that, and you need to bring out the strengths of everybody, because not everybody's going to be the same. And that's why we have the company concept. We talk about the span of control, 3 to 7 with 5 being optimal. And it's like, okay, but then think about it. How many are usually in our companies? 5 people. Usually 3 on the engine, hopefully, and then 2 on the ambulance company. And everything seems to work best when you have those 5 people. And as the lieutenant, you need to bring out the strengths with everybody. And maybe somebody's having a bad day. It's like, okay, don't get down on them. And it's like, I agree with you. You can't flip that switch and go from, you're hanging out and you're pulling pranks in the bunk room to, okay, now I'm the supervisor. And, how many guys do we work for? Throw the collar at you. And it's like, what are you doing? We talk, don't forget where you came from. Well, I think a lot of people, that's the first thing they do. If you have the lieutenant, you've got the trumpets probably on your collar. A lot of people are saying, they're plungers because they plunge, all the whatever has got to go through. And the story I like to tell with that is the first time I got dressed in Waukegan at that time, we had to wear the collared shirt. We weren't lucky enough to wear polos. When I got promoted, we weren't lucky enough to have the job shirts, which I think is very important, because as long as everybody looks good, they feel good, they're going to perform good, and they're going to perform good out in the field. And I remember I put on my uniform. I was getting ready to go my first day on the job, and my wife, Joanne, she made the comment, "Are those things heavy?" Meaning the collar insignia on my collar. And I said, yes, they are, not thinking the actual physical weight, but the amount of responsibility I have now to make sure that the people that are assigned to me go home at the end of their shift. And that's the most important thing. Whatever happens, we all got to go home. Well, if we have a good day, we have a bad day, and then we got to come back to work. And a lot of times you don't get that sense of camaraderie, with a smaller department, because you're not working with the same people. And, the captain probably is a little bit more removed from everybody, but that first line lieutenant, they're the ones that, if there's a problem, the lieutenant should be leading the way. And Jonathan can attest to this. When we were at Station 3, we'd go what we called downtown, which was Station 1 in Waukegan, Jackson, and Belvedere. And we would go in, and I says, when Station 3 walks into anything, we own that room. People are going to know Station 3 is here. And I used to walk in, never fear, Station 3 is here. Or, hey, you want us to solve your problem? Because we will. And we did. Good, aggressive firemen. And I say that with all due respect, firefighters, whatever. They were outstanding paramedics. They would run circles around anybody. And I'm sure they still can. But, the more important thing in my mind, and I could say that because we're all within a peer group here, is I need a good fireman. I can get a civilian to do medic stuff. They can do that all day long. I need good firemen, again, who can drag the hose. They can think for themselves. They can throw a ladder. They can crawl over stuff. Independent thought that they don't need somebody, not necessarily me, but somebody to be over their shoulder. Oh, do this, do that. If I have to tell you that, we're doing it wrong. We didn't have enough conversations at the kitchen table. We didn't have enough conversations on the training ground. It should be minimal conversation on the way to a call. We're lucky enough. Everybody's got the headsets. We should be talking about, hey, what are we having for lunch afterwards? Or, hey, what house is that? I think that's in the middle of the block. Yeah. I think we may have gone there for a rescue call. Let's go there. Let's take care of business. You get there, quick size up, or swift, probably more importantly, swift size up, accurate size up, be flexible that you may have to change things because you're getting more information. You're making your assessment on the first 30 seconds, maybe a minute, lead out a line, and bet you by golly, wow, let's put water on the fire because you know what? It might go out. So I've seen it where, I'm lucky enough to travel around the state. There are places that do the stupid stuff like handing out vests. They got to wait for a chief level officer to get there. And it's like, let's do something else. So, but that buddy to boss, yeah, I think that's important, especially if you're bringing along younger and even the more mature firefighters. I worked with firefighters when I was a lieutenant. I had people who were more mature than me, and I got to take care of them too. They come to work, they can do the job, but I don't expect them to do the same job that 23-year-old kid is going to do. And that's one of the joys and one of the challenges of dealing with a multi-generational workforce. So it's just, buddy to boss, I would agree. That's probably the best thing I've heard today. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. So with one of the things that stands out, we're talking about building up a group, right? Getting your crew on the same page, developing relationship outside of that. So not only is that done in the firehouse, how was shift training? Can you talk about some shift training insight, some of your beliefs with that and how you accomplish those things on shift?
It's a challenge. It truly is. And I'm not going to lie to you, especially if you're on a busy department. Because I almost think the busier the department you are, the more you need to train. I think we've got the EMS stuff down. We're doing good with that. I think, but then the department needs to give you the resources to be able to train on shift. And that's a challenge. That's like playing chess. If you have a large district or whatever area you're protecting, you've got multi-companies, you need a strong training officer or company officers. Hopefully everybody's working together. Say, you pull up, you do what you need to do with training, and then let's go home. And you got to make that investment. We don't, a department of whatever size, they may buy one forcible entry door, or maybe a district or maybe its division is going to share it. That's not going to work. We'll take Waukegan, for example. They should have multiple training doors. We should have some type of training facility. People should want to train. And even though, it may run over a little bit into lunch, we're going to feed you. Don't worry about that. Maybe we'll do some training in the evening. Maybe we should do some night stuff. You got to be creative with that. Sometimes, PowerPoint does work, but at some point you got to get a Halligan and a sledgehammer and let's go break things. Let's operate the saw. And there's creative stuff you can do. Let's change the blade on the saw. When was the last time we did that? Okay, now we're fairly proficient. What do you say we black out the face mask, put that on, change the saw in the dark, the saw blades? What about the nozzles? What do you know about this nozzle? You should know everything to know about that nozzle. Even the water rescue suit. It's getting to be nice weather. We probably don't need it, but you're still going to have people that are going to get into a body of water. Let's get that thing on. Let's make sure that things like that are ready to go. It's tough. In addition, the company officer is running training. They got to do whatever paperwork, and then now we got to go on calls. Some days it works, some days it doesn't. So it is a challenge, and a lot of that has to come from a good, strong training division. But what are the first things usually cut or not funded adequately enough, or we just don't do it in a department? The bureau, which the bureau, again, you didn't think I'd be the guy talking about bureau stuff, but that's very important too. They need to be out in the community. They need to be doing things. Company inspections, outstanding. We need to be able to go out and do that because that's district familiarization. We're on the road. The people are seeing the taxes that they're paying for. And then also to the training division. It's easy to throw a PowerPoint on, or when I got hired, we watched the heck out of VHS tapes. Yeah, I'll tell you, there was some really funky music, and in the late 70s training videos. Did we learn anything? I don't know. But then we were also going to a fair amount of fire. And so we were doing some stuff. So again, there's no magic solution to how to do that on shift. You're going to wear down a lot of people by doing things. And, we need to be dropping hose in the street. So that means we need to do that off a training engine because you can't take that off a frontline engine. And hopefully the training engine is set up the same way your frontline engine is, setting up master stream devices. But throwing ladders. We should have someplace in town where we can go throw ladders on a 2- and 3-story building. A lot of times we don't do that.
Yeah.
Just because the opportunities aren't there. And the bosses, they don't want to make that happen because it's very easy to do nothing. To do something requires a little bit of work.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think what's the phrase? It's hard to say yes, but really, like, it's not. I butcher that phrase, but basically, that's all the administration really needs to do for a lot of those things. Or I shouldn't say administration, but those that are able to make those decisions. All they got to do is say yes. And yeah, things cost money, but everything costs money. What's a priority?
It does. Right. It's easy to do nothing. It's easy to sit in the recliner. It's easy. Oh, we have this amount of work to do at the firehouse. You're right. Absolutely. We do. But that's going to be there. Maybe we should focus a little bit of time on these skills that we don't do all the time. Yes.
Well, yeah.
Search and rescue. Again, the core stuff. Yeah.
You'd mentioned like expertise and with the EMS, right? And this is an unpopular opinion that I have, but it's not my original thought. It's Scott Thompson. I don't know if you're aware of him. He's in Texas in the colony, and phenomenal, writes incredible articles and books and all that about culture. But one of the things he says is like a lot of firefighters will say, "Well, I'm not the expert," but you are. Like whether your knowledge level is up to you, but you are. Like on an EMS level, there's a doctor that wrote all your protocols that tells you what to do more or less. And I'm not devaluing what decisions have to be made in the back of an ambulance. I'm definitely not. But there is no doctor that wrote your script essentially for fire calls. That's you. You have to figure that out. And that's where that doesn't resonate. There's a disconnect, I think, between the knowledge level that you really need to have to be a substantially good firefighter.
Well, I think if you want to continue that thought, firemen are usually very humble. I was just doing my job. It's not a big deal. Yeah, it is. There's nobody else who can do that. And you got to remember at 2:00 in the morning, who are they calling? They're calling 911. I have a fire in my bedroom, or my little girl is sick. Come take care of us. And again, go back to Brunacini with customer service. What other occupation allows you to go into a total stranger's home, cut off all the pajamas on their 5-year-old girl, pick them up, take them away? There's nobody else that does that. And people are thanking us. And nobody else gets a chance to do that. So we need to recognize the fact that, hey, maybe we are pretty good. We could still be better, but let's feel good about ourselves. Mental health is a big issue in the fire service right now. And again, I'm not an expert in that field, but how much of that mental health problem that we have is our own creation? I'm not good enough. I can't do the job. I can't do this. And all we would need to do is, hey, good job. And a lot of that goes a long way, again, with that frontline supervisor. Hey, you guys did a great job. You did the best you could do. There was nothing more we could. It was out of our hands. The place was fully involved when we got here. There was no chance of making a rescue. Or, hey, that one window, only smoke was coming out. You guys did a VEIS. You got in and you pulled somebody out. True, somebody may have died, but you saved one person. Think about that. Let's focus on the positive stuff and reinforce that with people. And, try and make ourselves feel better. Let's work from within. I'm very tired of outside agencies and organizations coming into the fire department or the fire service telling us how we should be doing our job. We always have that with NFPA. We have that with OSHA. We have that, with the hospitals with EMS. That's always been my point of contention. Go back to the early 70s. Yes, the hospital should have EMS, but we should be telling them what we're going to do. When I went to paramedic school back in 1987, how much has the protocol changed and how thicker has it gotten and how many books do the students have to go through? Do we need that for every system? Do we need to do all this fancy gee whiz stuff? Has anybody done any research with all this increased knowledge base, which is taking away time from us doing fire training because we got all this EMS training? How many lives are we truly saving? You look at the helicopter transport service. Those have gone down because, A, they've gotten very expensive, and B, they've proven that they don't really save the lives that they said they were going to, especially here in the Midwest, because we're close to very good medical facilities. As you go further west, yes, that's a problem. The nearest hospital is an hour away. Yes, I need a helicopter. I don't need a helicopter, when the hospital's 5 minutes away. Unless I'm going to a trauma center, well, then, maybe we need to strengthen stuff up with that. Yeah. I mean, it's, every issue leads to another issue. Definitely the fire service is an onion, and you can start peeling away the layers, and it all depends what you want to focus on to make things better and hopefully not make them worse, because there's enough people that do that. They do that every third day when they show up. They make things worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Figuring out where to attack the problem, figuring out what things you could do that have that reverse onion ripple effect, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So not only shift training is obviously important, outside of that, what else exists? What else would you suggest for young firefighters, old firefighters? What's going to best serve them to get to that next level?
Definitely reading, doing the work, attending any class that's out there, getting certifications. Sometimes you have to make an investment. It's going to cost you a couple dollars to do that. But I think you owe it to yourself. You owe it to your crew. You owe it to your department and the community you protect to be the best you possibly could be. And if by going to a class, whatever it is, throwing ladders, dragging hose, the nozzle forward stuff, outstanding work. Is it new and revolutionary concepts? No. It's just somebody that was able to package, and here we are. Let's go do this. When I started, we crawled on all fours until somebody came up with the idea, which whatever, hey, maybe you should lead with one leg so in case there's a problem. Great idea. All right, so you start doing that. The hit it hard from the yard stuff. Back in my day, get off my lawn, that type of stuff. We called it darkening down the fire, and we would do that. Get in the front yard, charge the line, flow water, shut it down, and go in. Well, now we have the scientific data to back that up, that you darken down the fire, it's going to buy you 90 seconds. So you got to get inside. So that means you need to be really good deploying hose lines. Definitely getting a college degree, I think, is beneficial. It may not seem like it, but if nothing else, the networking, again, the camaraderie, and I think we need to more professionalize our service, what we're doing. You look at most police departments, they require a bachelor's degree, or at least a number of hours working towards that to get hired. So are we saying the police department is better than us? Absolutely not. And I'd say that to officer faces that I know. It's like, you guys ride around all day. We're the ones that actually do the work. It's if the police did what we did, you see these cops dropping. because they enjoy they're sitting all day, unless you're in a busy department and you're running down bad guys all the time. But it's just something that we got to practice that. You don't want to have the last time the guy threw a ladder to a second floor window to make a rescue was a year ago when we did ladders on the drill ground. That's something that needs to be done all the time. And you need to make that investment in yourself. If your department isn't giving it to you, you need to go someplace and do that. And we do that kind of well, but then also, too, you've got a lot of instructors that like to pontificate a lot. They think they're the experts. They think they're whatever. And I've been lucky enough to be an instructor for a couple of years, and I'm no better, no worse than anybody else. I tell people as instructors that I learn as much as the instructor does at classes that as the student does. I learn so much. Tell me how you do things. What's going on? And when I'm lucky enough to be with new or younger people, I said, you're the future of the fire service. You need to start questioning things. Maybe not today, because, hey, kid, just sit there and be quiet. But when you have an opportunity and you're sitting at the table, you need to be prepared to have a good defense. Occasionally you still hear the fog nozzle against a smoothbore debate. I don't hear the positive pressure versus, negative versus positive pressure. I don't hear that debate too much anymore. But the nozzle thing still comes up. And I've had people, I teach out in rural areas, well, we got to save our water. And I go, so you're saving it for what? You've got 1,000 gallons on your vehicle. How long is that going to last with that one hose line? Well, and I go, so do you know how much gallons per minute your nozzle's flowing? Okay. Sometimes just flow water. And even your deck gun, what nozzle tip do you have on that? Well, it's usually 1 3/8 because nobody changes it. That flows 500 gallons per minute. So what, 1,000-gallon tank, that's going to last, 2 minutes. Okay. Let's just sit there for 2 minutes and flow water. That's a heck of a lot of water. And if you put it in the right place at the right time, you're going to do a heck of a lot of good work. And again, people don't know that. So you need to challenge yourself and again, make yourself better. Force yourself to be better. But that also means, make sure to take time for family. Make sure to take time for, whatever, faith you believe in. Take care of that, because that's just going to make you a well-rounded individual.
Yeah. Great people make great firefighters. Yeah.
Family, and get her done. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, and now, I mean, the for all the negatives of social media, the positives that have been coming from it is you can get outside of your county, outside of your department, outside of your state, and you can really see. And you got to filter it, and you got to vet it, and you got to bring it back home. But
absolutely, yeah,
lots of great information is so easily accessible now, and most of it is free. So even like training doesn't have to be taking a class necessarily. It could be reading an article, reading a blog, listening to a podcast. Like, those things exist now in mass. You got to vet them, but they're easy to find, which is a pretty exciting time, I think, for training in the fire service. Is the networking that can happen is amazing.
Well, I think we're living in the greatest time because you have access to all this information. How much do we know about Milwaukee Fire Department? How much do we know about Chicago, what they're doing? They're not going to fire after fire after fire, but the busy companies, what are they doing? You can even learn stuff from the slopes places. Miami, Seattle. Yeah, absolutely, I agree with you. What are they doing, and why are they doing it that way? Again, always question why. So you get to go back and be like a 5-year-old kid, which is what a lot of firemen are anyways. It's like, why? We're doing it this way. Yeah. Question things. Why do we load the hose this way on the engine? Why are we using 200-foot pre-connects? Would 250 be better? Or maybe 150 in this practice if we need to extend it, another training skill. Yeah, absolutely.
You were talking about nozzle forward, and I took the 8-hour at FDIC this year. I finally got to go take it, and he's going to be in Bartlett later this year, and I'm going to try to go to that as well, because the coolest thing ever with Aaron Fields is if you take his class, you could take it again for free anywhere, and like that's just a normal thing, which is pretty amazing. But we're debating, or we're trying to, I shouldn't say debating, we're trying to get back to using a Minuteman, and we like that load. Most of us do. They switched to a triple layer load, and that's become a whole in-fight thing. So, but what was interesting was,
Yes.
Aaron Fields, he's from Seattle. Seattle runs a 200-foot Minuteman. The whole thing is 200 feet, right? And like when you hear him explain why, it wouldn't apply for us, where we could get away with a 150 or 100 Minuteman with a flat, right? He says that they have steep slopes and they have parked cars. So you take it off. You might be standing on a parked car, take it off, and then go deploy it. So having all 200 feet makes sense versus where I work, that wouldn't make sense. We don't need that. So you got to take things back home. You got to explore them and understand why people do certain things, for sure. Awesome advice.
Sure. Yeah. And definitely, set it up once. Maybe try a 300-foot and see if holy cow, this actually is pretty cool. Or maybe we should have at least one of these on the rig. So when we buy the next one, put another pre-connect bay on there so we can do this. LA, they have pre-connect bays, but they're not hooked up to anything. All they are is storage right by the pump panel. And they just pull off what they need. New York pulls off the back all the time. There's nothing pre-connected.
Yeah.
Again, different environment, but again, something to think about. Maybe that, maybe we should do that. Absolutely. Yeah.
You got to apply.
You got to think. You got to keep thinking. This is a thinking person's. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely thinking. I hate there's a thing with not every young fireman, but I do think that it can happen where it's all right. Shut up, kid. Where that's a horrible mindset to put into young firefighters, right? It should always be answering questions. And if you don't know, you go figure it out. You should never tell someone, shut up, we're not going to give you the answer to that. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't mean what you're doing is the best thing. It just means you're doing a thing.
Yeah.
And if we can come up with a better way or prove that, no, this is a bad way, it's not going to work for us today. But, when they put the new housing subdivision in, because building is going to start happening again, and they start putting in long courtyards or weird shaped parking lots, we may need to change the rig to make this happen. Yeah, and we'll be ready for it.
Yeah,
because that's what we need to do. I mean, we have to be more proactive as opposed to reactive. When we get there, the fire's already started, the person's already having the cardiac event. What can we do to help prevent this?
Yeah,
to make things better. Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think I kind of already maybe would assume, but over the course of your career and now post career, right, and the things that you're still doing, could you share a little bit about mentorship and formal, informal, anything mentorship?
Well, I think it's all our responsibility to leave the fire service better than we found it. So I think all in our own little way, we need to be a mentor. And, the funny thing is about everybody mentors, you just don't realize you're mentoring. The new person comes into the firehouse. Hey, let me show you. This is our fridge. Here's your locker. Here's what's going on. When we're on the ambulance together, I'll show you the trouble spots in town. When we're on the engine, we'll talk about this, we'll talk about that. And even, hey, I'm going to a class, or we're all going out for breakfast tomorrow. You got to come with, or, we're doing something off duty. And, again, the new people, they don't know. And it always is so much better because you want to feel comfortable as to what's happening, especially if you start a new job. You want these people to stay. How many people right now, they get hired by a fire department and they're jumping ship going to someplace else? Well, why are they doing that? And I was talking with some friends today, and I knew somebody that was on one fire department. They left, went to a different fire department, thinking the grass was greener, but then they decided to go back to their previous one. And I was like, what are you doing? Well, there was more money, there was this and that. Well, money's good. You got to have money. Money doesn't talk, it screams. So you got to have it. But, you want job satisfaction, and you want to be able to work with good people. And again, if you're working with people that could care less about you, could care less about the profession, maybe that isn't the place to be. And to this day, I still tell people, hey, if you want to go work with good, strong, solid individuals, both men and women, catch a few jobs, do some good EMS runs, you got to go to Waukegan. And I know a couple people that tested, and Waukegan, it seems, always goes deep on their list. And this one guy, well, I forget where he was on the list, and he goes, I'm not going to get hired. Well, Waukegan is hiring like 3 people today, or coming up, they're going to be sworn in. He's not one of those 3, but he's moving up on the list, and there's a good chance, hopefully Waukegan, knock on wood, will hire some more people, and they're going to get this kid. And again, this was a kid that came into us at Richmond, knew a little bit about the fire service, and I didn't have the time as much as I wanted to as fire chief to mentor, but it was always, how you doing? What's going on? What can we do to make things better? We onboarded you. We tried to make that process as smooth as we can. What can we do to make it better? And sometimes you get good answers, sometimes you wouldn't, and be like, okay, well, we'll change things. And we did change things with that. But as a mentor, you need to be available. Immediately. Here's my cell phone number. Call me, text me, email me, whatever you need to have happen, and we'll do that. Show them how to use the cascade. Here's the reason why we pack hose this way, and we're going to be working on changes. So if you like fire hose, hopefully you'll be able to be involved with that. And but when you hire somebody and they're brand new, they got a lot going on, so you don't want to throw too much at them. That's why the department needs to be prepared for the new people. They have to have a good employee handbook, and not just that tells you what the discipline is, tells you how many days off you are, but to tell you, engine 3 is this, rescue 3 is this rig here. Here's the district. Here's the map. Here's the borders. Here's what you need to do. And again, hopefully all that stuff's in place. But you look at fire departments, they've been around at least 50 to 100 years. They don't have that stuff. And that information gets lost as it gets passed down. Why is this building a hazard? Well, it's vacant now. But, when it was occupied, it was this. And it's even worse now that it's vacant. And again, I think it's the responsibility of everybody to be that mentor. Share your knowledge. Don't be an island or a silo is another good buzzword. I know more than you. No, that's not going to help us. That's not going to, things aren't going to be better. None of us are as strong as all of us. So we need to have that information.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mentorship in terms of formal versus informal. So pros and cons of both of them. So a formalized mentorship program. Did Waukegan have that? Have the departments you've worked for, do they have a formalized mentorship program?
Waukegan, I don't remember when I was there a formal program. The guys would normally, it was whoever was attracted to whoever, and they would help them out. The company officer, but if the company officer wasn't mentored, unless you have skills and stuff, you're probably not going to be a mentor with that. Beach Park did to a certain extent, a little bit smaller department, they could do that. Richmond, we tried to do that. Usually here in McHenry County, they usually call it like their big brother or big sister. So it's like, if you have a problem, you call this individual first. But again, if you run into people that don't want to be mentored, or they think they know everything, or even worse, if the mentor, if they're not prepped and ready to help people, it's not going to work. It's just like everybody can't be an instructor. Everybody wants to teach because it looks cool, but when I tell them, for every hour I'm in the classroom where I'm doing stuff, I've probably done 3 to 4 hours of prep. And they go, yeah, but you make it look so easy. And I go, yeah, well, let me tell you about the butterflies in my stomach. I just got offered a class to teach coming up in August, and I've done it before, ready to go, teach it for the Institute, but I'm still I'm doing some prep work today, getting things ready and making stuff happen. And we've all been to classes where you've got a bunch of people standing around and like, who are those guys? Oh, they're the instructors because it's cool. The instructor, I tell the students, the instructor should be working as hard as the student is. And I think the mentor should be too, because the mentor should be learning stuff. Because every time you talk to an individual, they're unique, they're special. And again, all this touchy-feely stuff to a certain extent is, I agree with some of it. It's like, yeah, just because Bob is one way doesn't mean Pete's going to be the same way. And you're going to have to do things differently. Even though Bob has prior experience, he doesn't have prior experience on our fire department. So you got to indoctrinate them. I think that would be something that would be it's got to be a fine line between formal and informal. It's they need to have some structure with the mentorship, but then the system needs to be flexible enough that, well, he's kind of got this, and let's do that. And even though he's a new hire, can he mentor other new hires?
Yeah.
To a certain extent, I think yes.
Yeah.
We're all in the same boat together. It'd be stupid not to use if somebody has prior skills and knowledge and abilities. Why waste it? Yeah,
that is
it's
always,
not like, hey, sit in the corner and be quiet.
Yeah, that has always baffled me about the fire service and you should have respect. I'm not saying that you should walk into a new department and think you own the place, right? I'm definitely not saying that. But if you worked really hard in a business setting and for however many years you got up to a point where you were good and you were going to move to another company, they would welcome your experience. They would trust in it. That's why they hired you. The fire service doesn't do that. We're very odd about that for some reason, and I don't know why. Maybe I think it's supposed to be a know your place, but I think if you know your role and you stay in your lane, but you still have experience, there's a balance there that we've completely wiped that and as an industry and basically said, hey, you're day one here, nothing else you did matters. And that doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And I've tried to do that with guys that we've hired and tell them, hey, it's okay. Tell me what you've done. I want to know what your experience is so I can cater lessons to you. Like, that makes more sense. I touchy-feely stuff, right? I as much as we all hate to say those things, but inclusion, a safe space, that kind of stuff sounds lame. But if you're not, as instructors, if you're not creating an environment that's safe for people to make mistakes in, they're not going to learn. If you're not creating an environment that's inclusive for different experience levels and different walks of life, you're not doing a good job as an instructor. Like, those are important things. And so with that, I wanted to kind of throw you an extra question that I just wrote in here, and it was, since we're talking about instructors, values and beliefs of instructors. So you don't necessarily got to pull rules out of your head, but what are some things that keywords or beliefs that instructors should have?
Honesty, fairness, inclusion, safe, and create an atmosphere in the classroom or the drill ground that people feel comfortable. Let's say I'm doing a class on engine company operations. Okay, well, I have my way of doing stuff. I know some other ways that I don't do, but I know other ways of doing it. You've been lucky enough to go to nozzle forward. I would definitely tap into you and say, well, tell me about this. What's your experience with that? Why would we keep that to you and not share that with the rest of the group? And it may be that you are going to instruct that portion of whatever we're doing. Okay, it's your time to shine. Go. And as an instructor, I shouldn't feel threatened. Well, he's taking my time away and stuff. No. What are we here for? We're here to learn. We're here to make ourselves better, make our community safer, and again, to make sure that everybody goes home. And one little nugget that you talk about saying, hey, everybody should carry a wooden wedge, and it's got to be accessible, whether it's in your helmet or whether, it's in a coat pocket, whatever it is. Radio pockets are good for that because everybody's wearing the radio straps now. And it's like, hey, chock that door. Boom. And it may be that all of us, oh, yeah, I know that. But you got one kid in the back going, wow, nobody ever said, they said wood chocks, but I didn't know why. And he made it so clear, and that's going to be great. Then you find out 6 months later, they go to a fire, the kid chocks the door, and it doesn't save the day because we'll never know, but the door didn't close, it didn't pinch the hose line, and they were able to accomplish their task. Everybody went home, and you just don't know. So it's again, you mentioned it all before, and I just repeated it. It was just, make sure it's an environment, and that's tough to do. That's tough to do as an instructor. It's you want me to come because I'm the outside expert. I'm the SME, the subject matter expert to make that happen. You're supposed to be listening to me, but I'm spending all my time listening to the class. And yeah, I'm learning stuff. I learn more on the breaks in between classes than I think we learn it during the class. Yeah, because that's when people come up and they go, hey, let me tell you about this. Let me tell you about that. I read this article. Oh, yeah, I read that too. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, but it's tough. Mentorship is tough. Instructing is tough. Leadership is tough. It's just that the people that make it look so easy, they just got it dialed in,
Yeah,
and that again, that's tough too. It's like the duck. They're the swan on the surface. It's gliding along, but underneath, it's paddling, man. Yeah,
absolutely. I
yeah,
can definitely sit and say that I have made my share of mistakes in the mentorship role, in the leadership role, even recently. Right, it's still a constant
yeah,
growth. It never stops, and you're always
yes,
trying to
yeah.
to continue to put a foot forward, right? And if you're not, then well, you don't care.
Well, I had a
But
very wise lieutenant tell me, if you never did anything, you never do anything wrong.
yeah,
So you always got to keep pushing the envelope. Know what the box is, know what you can work in, but you got to sometimes push the edges of that box or the envelope to make yourself better, and that's going to make the organization better. Are we going to make mistakes? Absolutely. I make mistakes all the time. I freely admit it. Um, Sometimes I'll tell you, sometimes I won't. And it may just be, after the event is over and I'll go, oh man, I really screwed the pooch on that one. Be like, yeah, well, what did I learn? Well, I learned this, this, and this. Okay. And it may just be simple enough. Don't trust that other guy again. We knew we not to trust him. No, we definitely know not to trust him. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, every
You got to make mistakes. It's the only way you're going to grow.
absolutely every mistake, every bad decision that you make on the training ground, or really in life in general,
Sure.
like that only
Absolutely. Yeah.
benefits you later when you get presented a situation again, and you can pull from that and make a better decision or do the skill better, in the field. Absolutely.
You're 100% spot on. You're right on the money on that. You are correct.
So, I'm loving talking training and the things behind
Yeah,
that.
sure.
It's what many of us, when it clicks, right? And certain people understand those things. So,
It does. Yes.
um, what would you say would be some advice for, let's say, a acting officer or a new company officer who gets assigned an older crew that maybe doesn't feel they need to train, or they don't want to train as much? They'll do like the minimum standards. And as that actor or new lieutenant, you don't believe in that, and you want to, train people better.
Well, you can't come in on day one and upset the apple cart because it's been working till you got there. And whether you're going to stay, whether you're an actor or you're a substitute, you're coming in and you'll be leaving. It's going to be happening after you. So you just need to find out what their dynamic is and find out what trips them, what makes them happy. Why don't you want to train? Well, it may come down to that. Again, we're not. Whoever was doing the instructing wasn't treating them, like a human being, fairly. You don't know what you're doing. You're the old guy, always making fun of them. Now we're always busting everybody, and I get that, and I think we should continue to do that because again, that builds the camaraderie, builds the teamwork, and I think it does toughen us up a little bit. But there is a point with the hazing, and we could talk about that till the cows come home with all that. But there's a certain amount of what do you know, and everybody knows something. So let's say you do have the seasoned engineer. That's all they do. They just drive the rig. Well, tell me about this rig of yours. I heard that you can make this, sit up and beg. Well, yeah, and what are some big calls you've been on, or even small calls? What can we glean from you? And it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen, the one day you're there. It's just going to take time. So you want to try and make it so training and more training is their idea. You want to have them saying, "Hey, all these new guys, they could really benefit from your knowledge and wisdom." You don't need to say baloney, and it's like, no, I think so, and here's why, and blah 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 blah. You tell them, that they need this knowledge, they need the experience, and maybe you could show them how your pump operates, because that's what you do every day. I'm not the guy to do that. Could I run your pump? Yes, but it's your pump. You got to do it yourself. Tell us about it. And again, just stand back and let them go. that takes time. That takes a lot of time. And again, as the officer, whatever it is, you got other stuff to do. But then now you also have a valuable thing, because I think the engineer is the valuable right hand of the officer. Usually it's the senior man, the senior person, and they're able to take care of business. So you got to make them feel part of the team. I've worked with some mature individuals, and they were counting down the days till they retired. Okay, well, it's going to be tough, but I'm going to need you to contribute every once in a while. And then eventually they would come around. Some of them were, they never did. Okay, you're not going to win every battle. You're not going to win everything, but if you're making an effort, and maybe they'll make a little bit of an effort, okay. Again, no silver bullet how to solve that problem. It's just using people skills. We have to remember that 90% of what we do in the fire service is people stuff. Could I get somebody to drag the hose and throw the ladders? Yeah. But where do we have most of our problems? When we're sitting in a firehouse. Maybe we got some downtime. Guys are, whatever, they get into heated discussions. They like a little tomfoolery, which is good to a certain point. So yeah, it's again, there's no really good, hey, do this, this, and this, and this will work.
Yeah.
Luckily we've been getting some good leadership books lately, but when I was coming up, there was really nothing. We're trying to take management books, the 1 Minute Manager. There was some other stuff that was out there, trying to adapt that to the fire service. To a certain extent, you can. Excuse me. The business end of the fire service, yes, but at the company officer level, I need somebody that's a dynamic, knowledgeable. Again, the stuff we talked about: fair, confident, friendly, approachable, whatever words you want to throw on that. If you've been to COFO, the company officer program, a lot of that stuff they talk about usually in the first couple of days, and that's stuff that you need to do to make happen. Again, not everybody should be an officer, just like everybody shouldn't be an instructor.
Yeah.
And then if you want to extend that thought, maybe everybody shouldn't be a fireman. But how many people are we stuck with on our fire departments?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. We've all worked with. I can name people. Again, I'm not going to, but there were people that I got as an officer. I won't say I got stuck with, but it was like, well, try and help this person out. And I'll go, I'm not a miracle worker here. And it's like, well, but a lot of times I was the junior guy. I had some success with other people, but there were a couple that I just couldn't turn them around. And I flat out told my boss, it's not going to happen. Again, not going to name names. Unless you want to find me someplace over adult beverages, I'll be more than happy to name names. But there were some people I worked with that were complete idiots. They showed up and they kind of wandered through the day, and then they went home. And I'm going, this guy's getting paid the same thing as everybody else. That's wrong. So a little beyond what you want there. It's
that's
work.
fine.
And that's the best part about it. Everything in the fire service is work.
Yeah.
Nothing is going to be given to you. You're going to have to earn it. And, from right away when you're a probationary guy all the way up to the fire chief. And it seems like it gets harder on the way up. The best job I ever had, man, was riding backwards. Everybody tells you what to do, when to do it, and sometimes they'll tell you how to do it. Okay, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Okay. That's why I like being on the ambulance, which I never thought I would say. You erase that portion of the tape. But it was fun. It was you and your partner. If you had a good partner, everything went well. You just did what you're going to do. You're going out, saving lives and taking care of business. And, hey, we get to go to a fire. Outstanding. Yes.
Yeah, I used to joke that the ambulance, if you got a really solid partner or crew, most of the time it was like you were like 15 at a sleepover with your best friend. Like, things worked. You clicked, and you didn't need much supervision because chemistry's everything. But yeah, I agree with you wholeheartely.
Yes.
And not that having a company officer messes things up, because you could have a solid company officer, and then now there's 3 or 4 of you that all click.
Sure.
But the partnership of an ambulance,
right. Yes,
it really there's something to that if you get the right one. And still some of my best
There were
friends in the
many
fire
days I
service.
felt like I was stealing the money.
Yeah, right. Like some people who I will be
Yeah,
definitely friends with for the next 40 something years of my life were partners of mine on an ambulance, like
absolutely, sure.
wholeheartedly.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. It's your 10th call of the day, and you're smiling and laughing and going, "Let's go, let's go." And yeah, many good times.
Yeah,
Usually late night stuff.
there's
Late night stuff.
Bobby
You turn the
Halton.
lights down in the back of the ambulance. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He says
Sure.
in one of his keynotes, and I can't remember
Yeah.
which one it was, but at FDIC, he says, and I'm paraphrasing because I am not going to recite Shakespeare or any of that stuff, but, Bobby Halton was
Right.
every bit of, yeah, anyway. So he says,
Right.
one
Yeah,
of the
Bobby
best
Halton,
things,
Bobby Halton.
right?
Yeah.
We get to do it together, everything. It doesn't matter how crappy it
Yes.
is, we do it together. And
Yeah.
yeah, that stuff is incredibly important about building your group and sticking together.
But then extend that thought. Extend that thought. That goes back to training. We're doing everything together, so that means we need to be able to do everything right. We need to be able to do everything safely. Everybody needs to know their job. Now, you may be better at throwing ladders than I am, but we can still do that together. We're good, and I'm going to learn from you. And maybe I'm good at something else. I don't know what that would be, but hopefully you'd be able to learn from me. And the crew's going to learn from all that together.
Yeah.
And again, that takes time. Whatever it may be, a year, 2 years. And, your paths may not cross again for a while. But again, that camaraderie and that friendship and that teamwork and the skills and everything, it's like a well-oiled machine. That's where the training comes across on departments. Everybody knows Engine 2 is going to lead out the same way Engine 1 is. The truck's going to go to the roof. We're going to be throwing ladders. We're going to be doing this. We're doing that. The ambulance crew is doing a search. Beautiful. We know we've trained to that. We've proven it on the drill ground. We've proven it on the fire ground. We know it's going to work. Why change it? We need to revisit it. Like I said, is what we're doing the right way? Yes. Okay. Then let's just keep doing it that same way. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
again, the public expects us.
absolutely. So as someone who's into training, into the job, all those things, have you found over the course of your career, you kind of half mentioned it a little bit earlier, do you find that you end up you got into a point where you could become the fixer? I've seen this, and I've seen it exhaust firefighters or eventual company officers, and I've seen it, like a delicate balance between putting somebody with the right group, but then I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. I have a lieutenant, and I love him dearly. He's awesome. And he's gotten beat up because he's gotten the problem child. He has gotten the hey, we're going to put you on this shift so you can kind of babysit this guy. And over time, I've seen that beat him up where, I think partially he can look at that as, a badge of honor. But I also understand the other side. Have you experienced anything like that?
I would think so. One of the things in the questions you gave me, is there anything I wish I would have done better over the course of my career? And it kind of leads into this. I think I wish I would have taken a little bit better care of myself, with eating and physical activity habits, because, I think my mind is still sharp. But, sometimes my body doesn't want to do what my mind does. And it's definitely a young person's game. But over the years, you get these people, and you'd hope like after 5, 6 o'clock at night, you'd be able to, on a 24-hour shift, relax a little bit, watch some TV, maybe read a book, just veg out. But, I find it was still, well, what can I do to make things better? What can I do to, to help Bob out for this? What about that? And, today he seemed to be pretty good. Was he on his meds or wasn't he on his meds? Maybe what we're doing is the right thing. So it is not only that, it's physically exhausting and it's mentally exhausting. And even with the training thing, how can we make things better? How can we make things, safer? All that. Yeah. If you don't, and especially harder if you don't get the buy-in from the department, or you're not the training officer, but you're doing the training because the training officer can't or won't. And everybody's looking to you. So in addition to everything else that you're doing, okay, we're going to do some training, and maybe you're organizing stuff off duty. Maybe, hey, we're getting a group. We're going to FDIC. We're going to Nozzle Forward. We're going to be doing some of these activities. And, yeah, it's tough. Oh, and then we got to do family stuff. We got birthdays, we got holidays, all that comes into play. So you really have to strike that balance with that,
Yeah.
and it's tough. And again, I mentioned before, you're not going to win every battle. That's the bad part. You'll make a huge investment into somebody, and you're not going to win. And maybe it's just because it doesn't work. The synergy isn't there. They transfer that person someplace else, or you get transferred, and whatever happens, then all of a sudden this guy is the shining star, and people look at you. Well, why couldn't you do that with him? Well, I was trying. Maybe we didn't get along. Maybe I was having a bad 6 months. I don't know. It's you just don't know. You don't know.
Yeah.
That's why there's chocolate and vanilla ice cream, man. I'm not going to win every battle, so we'll be okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, hey, you want chocolate? You can have chocolate. That's fine. You don't want it? We got vanilla. That works
That's
too.
right. Yeah.
I love that.
And to continue that thought, talking about food, is you're not going to make everybody happy. If you want to make everybody happy, give them pizza. We're not doing that, though. So there you go.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm going to take a second here to just say, you guys, if you want any other or have any other questions, put them in the chat and we'll get to them. I'd love to have some extra questions here for Chief, and but otherwise, I'm going to keep rolling down our list. But please throw some stuff in there if you could think of anything that you'd like answered. But I'm going to roll into the next question here. So, have you ever lost your passion for the fire service, and what got you back in it? If you did, and what keeps you passionate about the fire service?
I don't think I've lost my passion over the career. I think it may have waned a little bit. And again, if you don't win battles, or if bad things happen, or you go on bad calls, various things, your life, takes a turn, whatever the case is, you're running over speed bumps. I would think that you can't be 100% all the time. And that's, I think a lot of people don't realize that. You try, if you're going to work at a firehouse, again, you got the best job in the world. You're going out there, and I used to tell my crews, you're coming here. This should be like an oasis. Everything bad or whatever should be left outside. Let's focus on what we need to focus on, again, because this is a dangerous profession for making things happen. So, occasionally it would wane a little bit, and just being surrounded by good people, having a good support network, whether it's in the firehouse or your family or whatever your outside interests are, that would get me up. Always looking forward to a vacation. We used to take, big vacations, 2-3 week vacations over the years, and that would be something to look forward to. And then, or I got a class coming up I'm teaching, or I'm going to a class. That would always get me fired up. That would get me excited. But I've never lost the passion for what I do. Again, it's fun. It's interesting. I love what I do. I get a chance to help people. I get a chance to see people on their worst possible day and to make a significant difference in their lives. Whether, grandma's having a big cardiac event, whether we save her or not, that's important. But, if you don't, or you go to a fire, we make a good stop, or we make good tactical decisions, and you go, where the freak did that come from? Well, I pulled that out of my butt. Okay, it worked well, and whatever. It's just keeping a good attitude. It's just keeping, trying to stay positive, trying to, keep the negative away. And, if people are negative, don't hang out with them. Try not to have them in your company. I've been blessed that I've had good people around me my whole career. Occasionally there'd be some clinkers, but they would fall by the wayside because they weren't drinking the Kool-Aid like we were. It was, let's train, let's talk about fire, let's do this, let's do that. We come to work, we're gonna have a fire. I've had guys come to work. I hope we don't get a fire today. I hope we get 2 just because of you. And I hope we do it well. And on those rare occasions when we had multiple fires, holy cow, the first one was good. We shook the cobwebs off. The second one was awesome. Everybody parked in the right place. They threw ladders. We did search. We got good water supply, let out good. Everything was fine. And that keeps you going. It's, or maybe you go on an ambulance call and you deliver a baby. Those are cool. Or maybe you have a cardiac save, or you remembered the protocol. Woo! And you do what you got to do, and you make people better. People say thank you. It comes in the weirdest places. If you're good at what you do and you, you're loving what you do, that passion's always going to be there. And just roll with the punches, man. Every day is a new day. We're going to go to bed. We're going to sleep tomorrow. The sun's going to come up, and it's going to be cool. Yeah. We're going to have a fire tomorrow. Yes, we will. Yeah.
Got to believe that, right? I'm with you. I got a question. Brian Rao, he's saying, the fire service is dealing with recruitment issues. People are not coming out to the test as much as years ago. And when I tested 5 years ago, there were 100-something people, and now there's like 15. What are your thoughts on how we can combat this, especially since departments are having to compete for candidates instead of candidates having to compete for departments like in the past?
I think with that, again, I got to say, my thought is it's the fire service's fault, and maybe as a whole. But, we haven't really told people, who we are and what we do consistently over the years. It's like we told them for years to call 911. And then when they call 911 now, we get upset because they call 911. So, what does the fire department do? Maybe we need to, sometimes you can't do it, but, to open up the overhead doors, have more open houses, convince them that this is a great career. A lot of people don't think about that. Fire departments, that they do pay a fair amount of money. Maybe we need to advertise that a little bit more because that does appeal to some people. I think Fire Explorer programs or youth programs like that in high school are great to get people involved with that, or even people a little bit older. Maybe not necessarily with the Fire Explorers because they kind of stop at age 21, even though the Boy Scouts aren't involved anymore. But maybe we need to have a program where we have like if you want to call them cadets or junior firefighters, but expose them to what we do. Is this something you want to do? We don't do that. A lot of people don't think of the fire service as a career, and maybe we need to do a more non-traditional recruiting. I think you need to be recruiting for your fire department 24/7, 365, no matter whether you're a big department or you're this little East mud flap. You got to be doing that because you always need a constant flow of people coming in, and because people are going to be leaving. And it's true, competing with other departments. Maybe we need to go for more regional testing so you have a large list and then departments can pull off of that. I realize some of the pay and the benefits would be different, but maybe we could equalize that, a little bit more fairly. I don't want to civilianize the fire department. I love fire-based EMS. That's the way to go. I think because you got highly trained, highly motivated people, in strategic firehouses across the community, and they can do the best job. They can pull across resources a little bit better. But I think we need to do a better job at pub ed across the board, and also with the recruiting thing. Just because, hey, this is really cool, but then follow up with the people and get a database going. And it's a tough. Right now, it's the staffing, the recruiting issue, and also budgeting and money. That's the I think that's the two biggest problems, and they alternate between 1 and 2. There's no easy solution to that. Yeah. Fire apparatus have gone up, so that's going to eat up a lot of your budget. When you're spending $1 million on a fire engine, nothing special, a fire engine. A ladder truck, again, nothing special. I mean, those are close to $2 million.
Yeah.
Ambulances, the same thing. They've gone up. That's all stuff that we're going to have to do, and it's going to be very hard to compete with that, and then also to convince the public that we're going to have to raise taxes at some point, or something is going to have to give. Maybe we won't get another garbage truck because we got to buy a new fire engine. I don't want to cut people because I think we need to add people, but we should have been doing that over the years.
Yeah.
And again, this discussion comes up all the time. It's proven. 5-man engine companies are the way to go. If you can't do 5, 4 is good. 3 is like the absolute minimum, and those guys and gals, they got to be working. So again, unfortunately, I don't have a good solution to that. There's just education, and it should be people that want to do it Because who do we send out doing public ed? It's usually the new guys and gals
Yeah.
that we've just hired. They barely understand why the rigs are red and why we do what we do. You need professional people that go out and are recruiting all the time, intensely. Again, talk about motivation and stuff. Yeah, you can bring in service companies so they can look at the rigs, but I need somebody professionally saying, look, we're going to send you to school. We're going to give you all this education. You're going to get a college degree. And when you're done, you're going to be making close to $80,000 a year. Boom. You're not getting that anyplace else. And this is a career you're going to work for 20 years. You're 55 now, and you're going to wind up getting 50% of your salary. You can't beat that. But people don't think that far in the head. It's how many occupations have a guaranteed pension? If you're a full-time career department, there aren't many that do that. And I think that's one of the great advantages, and we got to sell people on that. So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
but again, that maybe if we were to regionalize that a little bit more. Again, we talked a little bit in the green room before we started, the silos and the islands, just people, Lake Zurich is doing something, but Waukegan has no idea, and vice versa. And who knows what North Chicago's doing? Mundelein. There could be great ideas, but nobody talks. And then when the prevention guys get together and the pub ed people get together, they got all these great ideas, but can they be able to implement them? Can they do things like that? No. The only time they get together is when they go to Gurney Mills, if you're in Lake County, when they do the Public Safety Expo.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. But that, yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Brian, think about that. Get in there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wolches says that you got to be the ambassador of your brand, right?
Mike Wood says.
Yeah. And totally.
Mike Wood, another great individual. I love him too. A lot of good stories I could tell you. Not on video though. But yeah, Mike and I did some good work together.
He was I think my second episode. Yeah. If you shameless plug, but Mike came on a while ago, and we had a good chat too. So
okay,
Mike's awesome for sure.
I'll bet. Another good man.
Yeah.
I would take him into a fire any day of the week. Yeah.
That's the best compliment you can give a firefighter. Good. I'd take him in. I
think so, yeah.
Right?
You try to say, they're a good fireman and they're a good paramedic, but don't tell them I said they were a good paramedic. They don't want to hear that.
Yeah, they don't want to hear that.
But I've seen some outstanding work.
Yeah.
Big burly firemen, doing the work, paramedic stuff, taking care of business, showing the tenderness and the caring that you don't see in society anymore. And it's like, who is this individual?
Yeah.
It's like, this is the guy that, 2 days ago was tearing down ceiling, cutting apart cars and doing the work. And now he's over here and he's with this 80-year-old woman holding her hand, and just taking care of stuff. And it's like, unbelievable. Yeah. And again, maybe we need to publicize that more, that's the work that we do. And again, we don't do that well. Yeah. Give them a medal for that. Just because you rescued a couple people, cool. But, 2 o'clock in the morning, nobody else is up. Even the cops aren't there. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Wolches says thank you, and he misses you.
Nice of him to say that, yeah. Okay. Thinking of a few stories there. Okay.
I would one day, maybe I'd love to hear those. But I didn't realize I wrote a double question. I hope I didn't delete one. And maybe we can. What I think we kind of touched on this a little. We did about what routines maybe you wish you would have had started younger, and I think you answered that really well.
I feel comfortable. Yeah, I feel comfortable with the education that I got. I wound up with a master's degree in fire service and homeland security management, and I feel that's been very beneficial towards the later end of my career. But education, you can't get enough of it. Whether you're going to hands-on classes or you're going to college level classes, that's very important. Reading, I've always read, and I recommend people do that. Never stop learning, never stop reading, never stop caring. So I'm kind of taking your negative question and turning it around, and it's just like, this is stuff you got to do. make that investment in yourself to take care of yourself, take care of your people. Um, yeah, I really can't think of other than like say take a little bit better care of my. If I'd have known I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. That type of thing.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, it's um, no. I think that I think I've been okay. I've been okay.
I love it.
The road's been interesting. You
Yeah,
just never know where life's going to take you. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, we're great at that's being a firefighter, right? Fireman is rolling with what you're given. Uh, so,
Yes, yeah.
oh, sorry. Um, so who, and it doesn't have to be someone you directly know, but it can be. Who would you say best personifies the American firefighter? And it doesn't have to necessarily be a name, but
Mike Wochez, Mike Wochez,
yeah,
Mike Wochez, Brian Rao, Jonathan DiNicola, everybody. I
I
think we
love
all
it.
do. If you're out there doing the work, you're putting in the reps, you're taking responsibility for your actions, you're being honest, you're helping people, you're showing up for work. You've made the investment in yourself and your department to make things better. I think we all do. I don't think there's one individual that stands above all of us with that regard because everybody does their own thing. That's why we're a team. There's no I in team. There is a me, but there's not an I. So we just take care. We just do the work, put the reps in. Strong work. Yeah, no, I don't. I don't think you could put it on one person.
I love it.
And
Yeah,
uh, some of the national figures. Some of them are kind of blowhardish, and it's like maybe they're right, or in my opinion, they're right maybe 50% of the time. The other 50% is a complete line of baloney, and whatever. Um, but yeah, there's no universal fit all fireman. Nope, not in my opinion. Maybe go back to Johnny Gage and Roy DeSoto. That would be it. Go
yeah,
back to emergency.
absolutely.
Maybe Tommy Gavin from Rescue Me. I don't know. I think we could probably relate to both of them.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you could definitely
Yeah.
relate to all of.
You
Yeah,
know what? How often do you? What would Tommy Gavin do?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Uh, So we again green roomed this one a little bit, but triaging the current state of the American Fire Service, right? So we're gonna say black is dead, red is dying, yellow's injured, and green's going strong. Where would you put us?
I'm going to put us in a green, a lime green, a weak green. I'm always the optimist. It's um, could things be better? Absolutely. Could things be worse? They always could be. But you got to remember, in the short time we've been talking here, how many calls have gone out across the United States? The bells go off, the pager goes off, people are getting out of rig, whether it's a fire engine, a truck, a squad, an ambulance, and they're going to help people. So I think in that regards, the fire service is doing what it needs to do. On the other hand, though, could we do things better? Yes. All the stuff we've talked about. Hifty, the hit it hard from the yard um, uh, Facebook page is there for a reason. It's stuff that people see, and God bless the people. They're taking care of their community, but could they be doing it better? Could that department be doing it better? Maybe, unfortunately, that is the best that they got. Whether it's Pennsylvania or Kentucky or wherever they're at, um, some of the stuff they do is plain out stupid, but they think they're doing the work, and it's up to people like us, and I'll throw us in that category. Everybody that's listening here tonight and will listen to this into the future. It's our job to go, yeah, there's that fringe group of people that are doing this, but that's not what the fire service is. The fire service is people that show up for work, or if it's a paid on call department, the pager goes off, or now the app goes off on the phone, and they go in at 2:00 in the morning for the stupid fire alarm, for the dumpster fire, for the lift assist, and they're just doing the work. And that's what we need to focus on. And we need to make those people more of a common than what's going on the Hifty page. Just do the job, train, study, work to make your own little corner of the fire service better. And if you can do that, and you can at the end of the day go, I feel good. And I'm hoping at the end of my career, which I don't know where it's going to be, but when I stop doing stuff like this and I stop going on the training ground and I stop doing things, hopefully I'll be able to sit on the front porch watching the loons on the lake, and I'm going, yeah, I think in some regard I made things better, and I feel better because of it. And it's people like you who are doing what you're doing are making things better. And I'm very, again, very honored to be here tonight. And very honored. Yeah, I was in your class at CLC. Okay, cool. That's like a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Brian Rao, the same thing. I taught a class in Highland Park last summer. I had a brother there. He came up to me. He goes, "Yeah, I was in your EMT class at St. Therese." Really? Huh? Well, I got sorry, brother. I don't remember you, but obviously you turned out all right. And occasionally I'll run into that. And it's the success stories. A good friend of mine, Zach Blauser, fire explorer in Waukegan. He's on Waukesha Fire Department now, and he's skyrocketing again because of whatever my mentorship or my telling him or whatever. He's put in the reps, he's done the work, and now he's able to do things. He went and got certified on his own, so he's able to drive their ladder truck. None of the guys there are on his crew. There's only a couple that are certified because Wisconsin has a certification for a ladder truck operator. He's got it. He's doing the thing. Again, paramedic, blah, 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 blah. But he's not on the ambulance. He gets to drive the ladder truck. You can't beat that. No. He gets to go to a firehouse. They got a weird schedule up there. They work like one day on, one day off, one day on.
Oh,
and they have like
yeah.
3 or 4 days off. It's just a weird thing they do. Yeah, that's Wisconsin for you. Yeah,
brutal.
It's got to be something with the cheddar cheese or
probably.
Something.
Yeah.
The Kringle.
The Kringle.
Yeah.
That's
so I think the fires. I think the fires. I think the fire service is doing okay.
Yeah.
And it's up to us, everybody that's here. We got to do this. We got to do it better. It's our responsibility to leave it better for the next generation. So when your kids, they're done playing, with the I see in the background there with the jungle forest with the tree and all that. Yes, when they're done that, they can go and they can ride the ambulance and they can do what they need to do, put in their time on the box, and then okay, now you get to see where the fire engine is. It's parked right next to it, but don't even look at that because it's not yours for 5 years.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Go clean a toilet someplace. Okay. Good. Yes.
Oh man. What would you say the most important element is for to end your career as positively as it began?
I think still keep doing what I love, and then to the key thing I found out over the last couple of years is to leave on your own terms. I remember when I got hired in Waukegan, a lot of guys would say that, at some point you're going to have to retire and stuff, but leave on your own terms. Don't be pushed out. Don't be forced out. Don't whatever. And, set a date and just go ahead and do it. Lately retirement has been challenging for me because I've been working. And, but I'm getting to that point now where, maybe in a couple of years, I'll be ready to actually retire and have something to do afterwards. And that's the big thing. I ran into a brother on Monday, and he actually retired from a fire department before, but he retired from the Institute. And he's already got stuff lined up, and he's got things to do. And that's kind of what I'm doing now. I'm still doing some teaching, finishing my book, hopefully starting up the new business. So we'll see. I've got tons of stuff to do. And we'll see how that goes. So I don't know. I don't know if I have a good answer to that question. I don't know how transitioning to retirement is going to go.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. I'm definitely not retired anymore. I know that. So I'm too busy working.
What can
I don't have
someone
a good answer to that question? I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. What could someone in over the course of their career apply? Just simple. I mean, I know it's a complex thing, but to get themselves to the end, so they're not. I see it so many times where people retire and they're bitter, or they're just done, and somewhere along the line they've gotten beat up.
Yeah.
What's something that people can do to combat that now, in the beginning or middle of their career?
I, I would think that if there's some way to change the environment that you're working in, change the culture, do something you're passionate about. If you don't like riding the ambulance and you can change that, then make that change. If you're surrounded by other negative people, some people are just unhappy. Some people are just bitter. There's nothing I can do about that. But keep that positive attitude. I've always tried to keep that. Things are going to happen. What are we going to do to solve this problem? I don't know. But this too shall pass to a certain extent. And always having that end goal in mind. It's what do you want to do when you don't have to do anything anymore? If you like the fishing, if you like the hunting, you want to read more, you want to travel more, get the motorhome. We'll start. It's we all kind of make our own lot in life, and just make the best lot you possibly can. And I would think that if you're a bitter, frustrated, warped, frustrated old man, it's just you're not going to be surrounded by good, strong people. And lucky enough, I've been lucky enough to be able to do that, and I stay in contact with them, and just keep moving forward. Again, not a good answer to that. What are you working for? I'm lucky enough. I've got a pension every month. A lot of people don't have that. I've made some wise investments over the years. That's the thing I've told new people to get hired now. On a career department, I said, you just got a big raise because wherever they worked at, it's a lot of money. Take that money you don't need or haven't had and just investment in whatever, deferred comp. I said that money grows. Even if you stop after 5 years, when you retire in 25, you're going to have a ton of dough. Hopefully it'll be worth something. It won't just be, I can buy a gallon of gas now or a loaf of bread. But, I invested wisely, and I did, I'm comfortable. I can do what I want. I travel. I still buy toys. So yeah, just doing that, and maybe keep doing stuff that you love. Keep that positive attitude. That's about all I can say with that. Because again, if you're doing stuff you don't want to do, then don't do it. That's the way I look at it. I'm old enough I can say no. I know, or it's like, no, I'm not doing that, or I'm going home. I'm done with this. Yeah, I don't need this anymore. So yeah. Awesome. Again, not a good answer. I apologize.
I would disagree. Yeah. I think that's a great answer. So,
okay.
Don't do the stuff you don't want to do. I mean, yeah, right? You have control over yourself.
That's the bottom line. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Brian Rao had another follow-up here to what we were talking about. We always are told to leave the scene better than we found it, whether it's a patient or a structure fire, and that should apply to the job as well. And he's absolutely right. 100% right.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. He's right on the money. Yeah, Brian's a smart guy, so he's dialed in. He's a strong individual. Yes. Yeah, it's good.
I love it. Well, Chief, that's it for my questions. I hope this is not the only time we do this, and I'm honored and appreciate you coming on and talking and sharing. And I know that whoever is listening or is going to listen to this at some point is going to get a lot out of it. And again, I appreciate you coming on and talking with me. It was awesome.
Absolutely. Again, I appreciate it. I'm humbled and honored, and hopefully somebody got something out of it. Couple closing thoughts I have is, keep studying, keep getting education, put in the reps, do the work, even if nobody else sees it, nobody else cares, make yourself better, because at some point you're going to have to give 110% of everything in your whole career, and you're going to have to make a significant go. You got to do this now, and you don't want to have to hesitate. You don't want to have to, I should have studied more. I should have forced another door. Oh, no. You want to be able to walk away and go, I gave 110%. I did the job. I did it well, and I made a difference. Yeah. So, yes. Everyone be safe. Wear your seatbelts. Stay hydrated. We're all dehydrated right now. Yeah, and that's clear liquids. Just so you know, clear liquids. Make sure to alternate. Yeah, it's good.
I love it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, with that, I'm gonna end our stream here and thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you on the next one. I'm going on vacation. Speaking of finding time for yourselves, my wife and I are going out on a cruise. Oh, stay with me, Chief.
Nice.
We'll green room again for closing, but I appreciate everyone listening, and have a nice night.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, sir. Be safe, everyone.